Parrot TV, the voice for humanity.
Hello, welcome to Parrot Literary Corner. Today we have Denja Abdullahi, who is a poet, playwright, dramatist, literary essayist, and culture technocrat. He was born on the 27th of August, 1969 in Ade. He hails from Agbaha, Baja, in Lokaja local government area of Kogi State, Nigeria. He was a student of English and literature at the University of Jos, Nigeria, where he was the best graduating student of the 1990 set. He has also got a master's degree in literature and English acquired at the University of Ilorin, Nigeria in 1992. Denja is renowned for his numerous writings across platforms and other public, cultural, intellectual engagements. His first published book, Marago, A Buffoon's Poetic Journey Across Northern Nigeria, received honorable mention for the prestigious ANA Cadbury 2001 Poetry Prize. Denja has published two poetry volumes in 2008, and his other published works are A Thousand Years of Thirst, Osh Poems, and Death and the King's Gray Hair and Other Plays. He also co-edited the books Things Fall Apart, But the Center Holds, published in 2009, in commemoration of the 50 years anniversary of Chua Achebe's Things Fall Apart, which was celebrated worldwide in 2008. Arrows Are Gods, critical essays on the leadership question in Achebe's Arrow of God, published in 2017, and for Ike Ogu for Poetry Tributes, published in February 2019. Denja has published two collections of his interviews on arts, literature, and cultural administration entitled On His Turf, Volumes 1 and 2. The waste of his creative output is The Road to Bashi and Other Poems. Denja has held several executive council positions in the ANA, which is the Association of Nigerian Authors. He was elected as president of the ANA and re-elected for a second and final term of 2 years. On the assumption of office of the president of the ANA in 2015, he brought greater visibility to the organization with resourceful and impactful programs and projects across the country until his exit as the president of the association on 2nd of November in 2019. He was appointed as the federal government by the federal government of Nigeria as the manager operations of Abuja Carnival after having consulted for the carnival since its inception in 2005. Denja, apart from teaching and other public service vocations in the areas of arts and culture, has also practiced active journalism with the News, AM News, Tempo Group in the mid-90s. Denja has attended several international literary fests, conferences, and residences in Ghana, Zimbabwe, Algeria, Senegal, Gambia, South Korea, and the USA. He is a UNESCO certified expert and facilitator on intangible cultural heritage of humanity. Thanks for joining us today, Denja. How are you? I think we got you a little upside down there. There you go. Nice to meet you, by the way.
Nice to be with you on this program. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you.
Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm happy to be on this program. I can hear you very well.
Oh, you can't hear me very well? Okay. I'll talk a little bit and just kind of.
Yes, I can.
You can hear me now. Okay, that's great. Okay, just checking, making sure we have a good connection. So my first question is a very general question. Where does your passion of literature come from? You've obviously got a very strong passion and to be so involved in literary arts. Where did that begin, and what continues your passion for literature?
I think my passion for literature began very early in life. When I started becoming aware of myself in the early ages, schools in the early ages, I started by at least reading the newspapers that my father used to bring home. At the end of the day, newspapers, I read them, and I got so much interested with words, stories. Well, at that very early age, I discovered that I was not too good in sciences. So I decided to, can you get me? Are you getting me, please? So I decided to focus on the arts. I would say that this passion was further stoked when I started studying literature in the secondary schools. I know they call it high schools in America or some places. I would read a lot of literature in the literature, under the literature subject in the school. So I was very good at literature. We're reading all sorts of Shakespeare's, we're reading Ngui, Chino Achebe, and the rest of them. So I became so interested in those stories. So when I got into university, not by design, just chance, I ended up studying literature as a university student. So remember my first year as a student of literature, of course, literature all over the place, English literature, studying literary tests were bombarded with it. And that heightened my interest in literature. But I now decided to, after encountering so many texts from various writers all over the world, across the world, with all sorts of ties, all sorts of sublimity, I decided to, I should write too. I decided to let me start writing. That I can write too. If people could express their thoughts in so varied manners, why not do mine? So that was how my first year in the university, I think I started penning creatively. Before then, I've been writing non-fiction, opinion articles, some criticism, the rest of them. But I started penning creative work in my first year as an undergraduate in the university in the mid-80s. So I think all along through the course of study, personal interest, I became so etched in literature, in writing. So that is how my interest came in.
Interesting. So it's something that you just felt like you had the passion stems from a sort of natural gift and understanding and reading literature. So your
Yes.
involvement, I was curious about your involvement with the A&A. What did you learn in working with Nigerian writers, about literature and in general about the history of your country, and was there any interesting experiences you had with the A&A?
Working as a manager of literature writers, the arts in Nigeria, on the auspices of Association of Nigeria has been a very wonderful experience for me because I became actively involved in that association about 20 years ago. About less than 5 years back, when I became an ordinary member after I graduated from university, and I started teaching literature at a higher institution in Nigeria. Started teaching literature in a polytechnic somewhere in the north of Nigeria. And when I started doing that, I decided to get into the association by establishing a branch of the association where I was teaching. So and since then, till I became president in 2015, I had been in the association. And I had been a manager sort in the association since 2001. And I never left that managerial position until I exited as president in 2019. And my experience has been very, very rewarding and enriching in the sense that through that association, I encountered a lot of writers, very famous writers who are world renowned, like Shoyinka, Abe, vicariously, and all other writers that were Nigerian first generation writers. I had encountered them because they were all members of the association, or they were then retired and in the ground, but we always call them to many of our events. then I was able to now see richness of Nigerian literature in terms of its contemporary nature. Because at the period I came in and became an officer, we used to, we do administer literary prize, and every year people do submit tests to be assessed. Some of the tests in drama, poetry, in prose, and you see a lot of wonderful write-ups in all sorts of voices by young and old Nigerian writers. So I used to be amazed that people are still were still writing and publishing with this volume, in spite of the difficulties in Nigeria in terms of lack of support system for literature. So I now saw these writings in all forms and styles that to see at close quarters the variety and the richness of Nigerian literature. Now, also, I was able to also see the trends. I was able to follow the trends of writing in Nigeria in those years that I was part of the organization as an executive member. Because you see most of the writers that are world famous. When I say world famous, many of them migrated to the Americas, became household name. Chimamanda, Helen Abila, mentioned many of them that became celebrities when they left this country. Many of them passed through the association of doctors. When I say passed through, some of them are nurtured in the association. Some of them were great because in the association, we do a number of events. We do also outreach program. We do literature competitions. We do authors outreach programs, sitting schools, institutions. We do conference seminars, intellectual seminars on Nigerian literature. Because every year we pick on a theme on Nigerian literature and look for people to come and talk, scholars, and we all get people to come and present all sorts of papers, intellectual pieces on Nigerian literature. So in the association, you have a set of writers and scholars cooperating. In Nigeria, many of the people who write in Nigerian writers, many of them are also teachers of literature. They are scholars. You can call them scholars and writers. They handle both. So you see this interface between Nigerian writers and Nigerian scholars talking Nigerian literature. So the experience has been very rich, and it is sustained for the past 40 years. Akire started the Association of Authors with people like Ngugi Watingo and some other Nigerian writers in 1981. And this tradition of meeting every year, doing programs every year, gathering authors together to do a number of things, has sustained for the past 40 years. Anna is 42 this year. So you can see. So also when I got into the leadership of the association, I was able to also midwife a lot of programs. We started having things like a spirit literary criticism conference in collaboration with the university in Nigeria that we will spend 2 or 3 days discussing emerging trends in Nigerian literature. Scholars and writers will gather and discuss these things. I also did a strategic plan for the association. Again, I also did what we call a documentary on the association, periscoping the history, the way it started and what has come, the achievements. So I would say, in summary, the Association of Nigerian Authors and my experience in it has been very, very different in terms of my literary career, because people know me more as a literary administrator. I've learned literary administration, how to manage writers, how to promote writers, how to discover talents, writing talents, and position those talents for other acclaim. Because in the association, we do a lot of things we call literary agency. We may not call it literary agency, but we do a lot of things for upcoming writers. Even established writers, we promote them, we promote their work, we turn their script, maybe it's a novel, turn it into adaptive text, drama, and all of. So it has been short. It has been very rewarding experience for me. Hello?
Yes, I'm here. What are some of the challenges?
It has been a very rewarding experience, although it has not been
very rewarding. Yeah. So what are some of the challenges of bringing? I'm sorry.
Well, the challenges have been.
Can you repeat that?
Yeah. Hello?
Yes, I'm here.
Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Okay, go ahead.
Oh, what I was
I can
asking
hear
is
you now.
what are some of the challenges of bringing Nigerian literature into the world and out of Africa and through the rest of Africa? What are some of the challenges if you found for that bringing the literature out?
Okay, well, I think Nigerian literature in the whole wide world, where in Africa and bringing into the world, it has, if I look at it from the perspective of how Nigerian literature is regarded outside in Africa and the world, I would say Nigeria has, with all sorts of modesty, Nigeria has more writers, thriving writers, popular writers than any part of Africa. Yes, Nigerian writers are many. And when you talk of African literature, the chunk what we call African literature is Nigerian literature. A chunk of African literature is Nigerian in character. Yes, because when you want to mention figures that defines African literature, you mention a lot of Nigerians, Achebe, Soyinka, J.P. Clark, and the rest of them. So there are so many. So in Nigerian literature, the reception of it outside Nigeria, in other African countries, and in the world has not been that too challenging. And when I say not challenging, I mean it is well received. The only problem we have will be that our writers, at a point in Nigeria, we had a lot of all sorts of problems. Maybe in the 80s, when we had those economic problem and dictatorship under the military, a lot of our writers left the continent, left the country to the diaspora. So the richness, as we speak, when you talk of the better part of our literature, is in exile.
Right.
Our writers are all over the world. They've left the continent. Because of the problems they faced in the country, they've left the country. They are there. So the challenge I would say is that our writing now seems to be diaspora. We are not being helped. The writers with Nigeria now speak. They are not as well known beyond the first generation who made their name before the problem that happened in the 80s and the 90s. When I said Soyinka, Achebe, J. Clark, Oshofin, Chukwemeka Ike, and the rest of them, beyond the set of after them, many of our writers who came after, particularly younger ones, who got their teeth in the 90s, in the late 80s and 90s, they are in the diaspora. And the ones that are not in the diaspora are not being heard. Because if you remain in Africa, you remain in Nigeria, if you are not careful, your talents, your visibility will not go beyond this country that you are inside. Because there is no support for literature in Nigeria, institutional support in terms of grants, residencies, in terms of other forms of support that we know exist in the Western world, promote writers and to promote literature. It doesn't exist here. So most people who have continued to write within Nigeria, within Africa, they've got a lot of effort. They make a lot of effort, they make a lot of sacrifices to continue to be relevant writers. Because if they don't do that, they will even never get to write. So the support system that is taken for granted in the Western world for literature, for writers, is not there in this country. So people go through all sorts of problems to write. And particularly, publishing collapsed many years back, and traditional form of publishing no longer existent. So writers will now have to write. After writing, go into vanity publishing or self-publishing. So when you do that, promotion, literary agencies non-existent. Promotion too will be there. So at the end of it, it is only by a kind of stroke of miracle or luck that you can be heard beyond the shores of Nigeria. You don't even make any economic gain by writing in Nigeria as we speak. When I say economic, you write, you publish, you don't get anything in return. Your books are unsold. Most of your books given away free to people, to your friends, to your contemporaries and the rest, and you don't gain anything back as a writer in terms of finance, in terms of financial gains is not there, and you cannot also exist as purely as a professional writer in Nigeria, in the sense that if you can't live writing, you must hold one job or the other. So many of our writers, like I told you earlier, they are teaching in universities. They have to teach so that they can get income for their they can steady income from their teaching assignments. Those who are not teaching are working as guide doctors. Some are in the public service as bureaucrats. All sorts of jobs, right? So that they can have the stability to write, because the writing cannot sustain them. That is the situation. That is the challenge that we have within Nigeria.
So what led to the collapse of the traditional form of publishing in Nigeria? And is there anything that the ANA is doing to revive it?
Well, the collapse of publishing in Nigeria, the story of the collapse is not different from the story in Africa, worldwide, continental-wide, in the sense that when the multinational publishing companies, Oxford, Longman, who were in Nigeria in the 60s, late 60s, this big publishing outfit came into the continent and, in a way, in quote, discovered our first generation writers. Many of our first generation writers, Soyinka, Achebe, Okotbitek, Ngugi Thiong'o, and the rest of them, they were published by these multinational corporations, publishing. So they enjoy at least being published by those people without them having to finance their publication. They also enjoy the promotion, literary promotion by publishing outfit. So when in the 80s, with the social adjustment program, economic program that Nigeria got borrowed from the IMF, and the World Bank was introduced, publishing collapsed, the publishing industry collapsed. The papers that Nigeria has used to get passed to publish books, they all died. Then it became difficult for those publishing companies operate within Nigeria. They all moved out of the continent, of the country. So when they moved out, the writers were left without publishers. Now started happening was that local publishers tried to fill in the gap, but those local publishers were not too economically to indulge in publishing creative writing, because in Nigeria, publishers don't make money from publishing activity. They make their money publishing academic tests, school tests that will be in that will be bought in multitude. So if you publish creative pieces, nobody buys them.
Right.
So that was the problem in the 80s to the 90s. So when that problem, but in the late 2000s, some brave indigenous local publishers started coming back to fill the gap. So right now, the situation is better, for we have a number of publishers now that are adventurous in publishing creative text in the traditional, without asking the writer to support the publication by bringing money or going to publishing. So we have Cassava Republic, Parasia, the rest of them. Some of them were Nigerian publishing out, Nigerians that were outside the continent, in London, America, who decided to come back to introduce traditional publishing. And they did a lot of work in helping to get some contemporary, very good contemporary Nigerian authors published and marketed. So that is the situation. So Association of Nigerian Authors was not our intervention to just do what we call literary agency. We try to match writers with potential publishers. We try to see talents. For example, when we have a good script, we have discovered in the course of our commission that is unpublished, we try to link the author to a publisher that take on the script. that this script has been as good, you can, if you publish it, you'll be helping creativity, and you may likely get a return on your investment. So that is what we try to do. But at a point, we had to even think of floating publishing outfit modeled after the African writers. You know, if you remember the African writers series that activated in the 60s and led to a discovery of a lot of talent across Africa. So we floated what we call Nigerian writers, where we asked for manuscripts we called for manuscripts. Manuscript came in, we farmed the manuscripts to editors who did some thorough work, assessors who looked at them, and okay, out of this multitude, we found them worthy of more work to be published. So we came up with 10 novels, prose in 2014. In 2016, 17, we did another exercise where we also published some sort of children literature for that are good for Nigeria. So, but our effort, this modest effort, is still met with the usual problem. The usual problem is this: you publish, then you don't make a return on investment. You publish about 2,000 copies of a text, then you don't sell more than 100 copies. So that is
very challenging.
where I'm saying that that is the challenge we still have. And most publishers of creative text, most publishers of creative text still have that same problem of getting markets where it's bought in groups and multitude. Thank you.
Right. So, would you like to share a poem with us?
Okay. Yeah, let me look at. I have a number of poems I want to share with you. Let me share one from a collection, 1,000 Years of Text.
Okay.
1,000 Years of Text. Yes. This collection was published in 2011. I will just share the first poem there with you. The first poem is called, in that collection, is Oasis. Oasis. Get me my saddle heels, for I must make haste to the oasis. Clad me in the most princely robe around. Mold my tongue to sing a song. Whisper the promise of scented fluid into my camel's ears. I make it race to the prized beauty, said to be waiting in honor at the oasis. Long have I encamped in virtueless plains. Long have I foraged through putrid pastures. Long have I supplicated in temple of ease. Now I long for the musky freshness of the oasis. Now I crave to be tended by the delectable one of the oasis. Now I soon to unveil one of the oasis. Let the rosy bit girl of the oasis shine not in welcoming the rest rider. Let the one with the dreamy eyes prepare a set tent just beside the spring. For this encampment will surely be long enough to savor all the joys ever present in the oasis for all we travelers. Thank you.
For sharing that. So,
Thank
what
you.
inspired that poem? It's very eloquent. What inspired that?
Well. This poem particularly, I want to make it the signature poem of the collection. I wanted to do an invocation. You know, it's very common in Nigeria, in Nigerian poetic balance. When you see a published book of poetry, you definitely, it's the pattern at the time I wrote this. So the author will open the collection with an invocation. You know, in our culture, when you want to start performance, let's say in the oral culture, orator, when a poet wants to start performance, he has to invoke the spirits. He has to pay homage to those that have gone before the field. He has to call the elements. You call the elements to come and assist you in the journey of sequence you want to make. So that particular poem was structured, was inspired with that thinking in that let me do an invocation. And I also confess that I was also inspired to write that first one from my experience with Persian poetry, the Persian poetry of saints. You know, when the poetry, a lot of talk about union beloved, intoxicated with all those skills. So I tried to use the poem because I went through some. By the time I wrote it, I went some poetry of Imam Ayatollah Khomeini and some other people who in Iran then, and Persian poetry. And I loved what I saw, and I decided to adopt the style. So that is the way this particular poem was inspired.
So what are some of the highlights of yes, I'm here. What are some of the highlights of your literary work that you've published?
Okay, well, I would say one of the very, very remarkable highlights of my literary career as a writer was the first book I published, which was like a defining book, and which up to today can be considered as a magnum opus. That is the book that was unique to me as a writer in Nigeria, as unique to me in my voice. When that work came out, it was the first book I published, 2001. People struck with the style that I adopted because I went back into African literature that has been long forgotten, particularly in the north of Nigeria. Nigeria is very big with several tribal cultures, with several oral cultures that have very rich oral literary heritage. So when you see Nigerian writers, the first generation and the rest of them that were remarkable, Achebe showing what made them remarkable at that time they came out was the cultural risk behind their writing, which is oral literature of their place of birth. So in this case, in northern Nigeria, poetry was flourishing in the pre-colonial era up to the colonial time. But contemporary northern Nigeria has lost its poetry. They've lost it. So what I did at that time is that I was living in northern Nigeria. That I decided to research back into the culture, the oral literary culture of the northern Nigerian society. And I discovered a form. There's a particular form, they call it itinerant buffon, more like the troubadours, is it Spanish literature, troubadours, I don't know, more like people, artists going around singing and making buffoonery, singing, making clowning over the place. So I picked that form as a narrative voice in my poem. And that in that particular work is called Merogo. That's a buffon's poetic journey around that area. So when that work came out, it's a long poem done in the epic kind of tradition. When the work came out, people were astounded with the uniqueness of the that I used. And I think that was a defining moment in my literary career. That has been the work that people always associate me with. A writer, you may write a 20, 30 novels, or you write published volumes. There will always be a particular work that critics will associate with you as defining you as a writer. Once they mention your name, that work will quickly come up. Just like when you say Achebe, you think of Things Fall Apart. Achebe has written better works than Things Fall Apart. When you talk of Olawuyi, one of the defining pieces that you always play with Yinka as the heart of his creativity as a playwright is Death and the King's Horseman. Yes, that is the text that you will go to because of the poetic structure of that play and the way it communicated in the used language. So this book has been like that has defined me as a. Beyond that, another epical. I have two moments in my literary career I can say has been defining. The other is a play I wrote in 2002 that was published in 2014, which is Death and the King's Grey Hair.
Right.
That work was written in 1994. If I remember, as a manuscript. I think I first wrote that work in 1994. Put it in the cooler. I didn't even do anything with it then. I was just kept it. And after about so many years, I brought it out again, looked at it, did some touches, and published it. And that work, when it came out, also got a lot, very critical attention. Performances of that work has been performed several in so many universities and so many places. And that work nearly won me a very big prize in 2018. Sorry, 2008. Yes. The work was shortlisted for one of the most prestigious, not one of the most prestigious literary prize in Nigeria, which is called the Nigerian Prize for Literature, which goes with the price tag of $100,000. Yes, $100,000. That's the price tag. I was shortlisted. Out of so many work, I was among the last three. Every other person that has read my work, I will say, this test is definitely the winner. But unfortunately, I didn't win that year. I never won. But that work is also a remarkable that people still go back to. Even me, when I go back, I wonder what was I doing when I worked. So those are the two defining moments in my literary career. Those two tests.
We're going to have to stop you there because we've got less than a minute.
Very many other things.
Yeah, less than a minute left. So we're going to have to close the show, but it's very nice talking to you. Thank you very much, Denja, for speaking with us today. This is
no problem.
New York.
Thank you for having me.
No problem.
Okay.
This has been the New York Parrot Literary Corner, and I'm Dustin Pickering. And please subscribe to our channel, everybody out there viewing. And thank you to our viewers very much for paying attention to us and giving us the honor of listening in.